Keir Starmer is going on a bit of a European tour, a global tour, actually. He's off to Canada today, but yesterday, of course, he was over in The Hague. He was with the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, and indeed the Shadow Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, and they've unveiled Labour's plans to fix the government's asylum system, and they say save taxpayers billions.
Yes, hotels, barges and former military sites would no longer be used to house asylum seekers under a Labour government. The party said it would promise new staff to cut the current claims backlog as well.
With more than 23,000 migrants arriving in small boats just this year to date, Starmer says that closer cooperation with the EU would help the UK, quote, take back control, if you've heard that before, of a situation that the government has totally lost control of.
Well, GB News' political correspondent Olivia Utley joins us live now from College Green. Good morning to you, Olivia. And Sir Keir Starmer, he's been criticised by the left and the right, hasn't he, over these plans?
Well, he has. Westminster has been waiting a long time for Keir Starmer to unveil Labour's plan for immigration. Back in February, the leader of the opposition made a speech outlining his 5 missions for a better Britain. And very conspicuously, dealing with the small boats was not on the list at all. So ever since then, there's been a bit of a black hole where Labour's immigration policy should be. Now he has unveiled this raft of measures that he would introduce if he becomes Prime Minister after a general election. And a couple of them are very controversial indeed. As part of his plan, he would set up a returns agreement with the EU, whereby the UK would take a quota of migrants from Europe, people who had arrived in Europe, and in exchange, we would be able to send back some migrants who've arrived from Calais back to France. Now, to lots of people sitting at home, and I think particularly Brexiteers, and I think Labour-minded Brexiteers specifically, this doesn't sound great. It sounds a little bit as though Keir Starmer wants to sign up to an EU-wide policy which is already in place, this quotas policy, and in some respects hand back some of Britain's migration policy control to Europe. That's how the Conservatives are going to be spinning it anyway, and this morning they're sounding pretty gleeful, to be honest, because they clearly think this is going to go down like a lead balloon. Some of the other measures, though, in Keir Starmer's immigration policy plan will worry the Conservatives. Keir Starmer talks about clearing the immigration backlog, which will put a spotlight on that backlog, and it is pretty alarming. It takes, on average, 430 days for a migrant's asylum claim, to be processed here. And in that time, until and if the Rwanda plan is ever implemented, those migrants have to be housed somewhere in the UK. The government sort of patched together a solution with barges and barracks, but it hasn't really worked very well. And now the spotlight is on them to clear it up. Labour says it was introduced Nightingale centres where migrants would be housed. Sounds good in theory, would it work in practice? But one way or another, the spotlight's very much on the Conservatives.
Well, Olivia, thank you for that explanation. It is an extraordinary time when we see the Labour Party trying to sound more controlling of migration than the Conservatives. What a through-the-looking-glass world we're in at the moment. Olivia, we'll be back to you later in the day. But Ben Habib joins us now, the former Brexit Party MEP. Ben, 136,779 is the current number of the backlog. 6 figures of people awaiting decisions. How does Labour clear that with any speed at all?
Well, you know how they're going to clear it. It should be obvious, shouldn't it, Tom? They're just going to wave it all through. And Keir Starmer's plan, I mean, what's eye-catching about it is in the swapping of those who've entered the United Kingdom illegally with those who've entered the European Union illegally, he would legitimise their illegal activity. That's what he's saying. We will send you back people who've entered our country illegally in return for taking those who've entered the European Union illegally, and we'll settle the position, and then there will be no deportations. So what he's actually doing is embedding illegal migration. He's not addressing it. He's giving into it. He's legitimising it through this people's swap. And in terms of dealing with the backlog, all he's going to do is rush through the applications, pay scant give it scant attention, give it the kind of attention that would be required to really determine whether a claim was legitimate or not, and actually just settle everyone and get rid of the optics, which is haunting the Conservative Party, of these people being put up in hotels, having their medical bills paid, having their dental care looked after, getting cash in their pockets, just to enumerate some of the benefits that they get when they're in the United Kingdom.
But aside from accepting that quota of migrants from the EU and in turn having that returns policy back to France, it does sound very similar to Conservative policy, doesn't it, in terms of reducing the backlog and stopping the use of migrant hotels?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the fundamental difference, but I'm not going to defend the Conservatives, by the way, because they've got this wrong, but the fundamental difference, I think, between the Conservatives and Labour is the Conservatives do actually want to stop the boats. They want that traffic to stop. They understand they've got a problem with the asylum system and they're trying to address it. But they want the boats to stop. What they don't want to do is embed the problem in the way that Keir Starmer would. I mean, what Keir Starmer would effectively be saying to the people smugglers is, as soon as you've got people into the European Union, fine, they can enter the United Kingdom legitimately, because that's ultimately where his plan would go. And it's curious for me that he goes to the EU to find a solution, because, not with my Brexiteer hat on, but because the EU created this problem. Remember, these illegal migrants enter the United Kingdom via Italy, the West Balkans and Greece. And then they can come across the EU because of the ridiculous Schengen zone, which provides no controls on movement within the European Union member states that are part of the Schengen zone. So they can find their way onto the beaches of Calais without any law enforcement either having been exercised on the way. So this is a European Union created problem. It's a problem the EU has fundamentally failed to get a grip of, and he seems to think there would be salvation for the UK in doing a deal with the EU. It is the abrogation of unilateral action and personal agency on the account of Keir Starmer. What he should be saying is, and this is what Rishi Sunak should be saying too, if I may say so, is I am the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is an independent sovereign state. It is our right and our obligation to protect our borders, and we will stop the boats physically using border control in the traditional way that border control used to be exercised. And if the French can't get a grip of their problem, we'll do it for them in the Channel. But these people will not be allowed to cross into British territorial waters. That is border control.